Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Spark series by Opto Research Consultancy Services. It's a podcast focused on getting insights and experiences from the experts in the field of eye and vision care. Today, we have Dr. Krishna Kumar, former principal of Lake School of Optometry, as well as he was my principal and first boss in my career. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Krishna Kumar.
Namaskaram. It's a nice thing and very happy to see Opto Research Consulting Service, a unique kind in India, is doing very well. I heard from different sources that you are really supporting the research initiative in parts and in full as well, both from the students and from institutions. And that's a great way of going and unique way of leading research itself. I'm very proud.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And let me start with the first question. So, what really inspired your research career, and can you share some of the rewarding aspects you have experienced so far from your research career?
Okay, thank you, Gopi. First of all, I'm a strong believer that I'm not a researcher, but I always feel there are questions all around us every time whenever we interact with people like you, students, researchers, clinicians, patients, especially related to the subjects which are more close to us. Fortunately, optometry was more close to me, and some areas of optometry usually strikes me a lot. So the way I see the question being asked, if you equate it to be a research question, then naturally it will lead us to doing something with that question, manipulate it, try to see, find answer for it through different sources. I think my first journey, if at all I can, in fact, long back in 94, 95, I think, in fact, that is also came from one of my junior. That means I'm not talking much research during my college days, because those time it was not a part of the system. It is out of your interest, you can do it. I was talking about after I've joined as optometrist, working as an optometrist. This was a question raised by one of my junior. I think his name is Vallam Srinivas Rao. I think many of you know he was with LVP and now he's in Australia. And he said, uh, I have a very interesting question to ask, and whether you have an answer for it. That's how thing. I said, usually I've been at that time, always I don't like to answer any question. I think many of my students know this fellow will never answer, probably he doesn't know, but that's my way of ask. Question is very important, and answer, if you get by yourself, the individual itself, it will remain with you for a longer time than the answer given by external source. I am always believe it, internal locus should be more triggered than the external locus is a stimulus to get triggered. Of course, in some situation it is true. So that question has led. I told, okay, in that case, why not we find out the answer? And of course, interestingly, that person, Vallam, in fact, he already did some lot of literature work. Whatever resources available in that time in the library, so he jotted down. And usually, he has got a unique style of writing paper. If Vallam is listening, he will remember. He jotted down in a white sheet without any numbering. He always have the indexing, he never does. Even in the answer sheet, I remember he never do the indexing. So he tried to put down all the thing as if like a paragraph. Of course, these are all points are there. There are many paragraphs. I think I said, okay, now we are ready with the question. And you according to you, the answer is not clear in literature. Keep back of mind. I didn't put any effort of finding out answer. Rather, I don't want to give my presumption and assumption. So then we went to the research head at that time. First question, he said, I'm first. He asked around 10 questions to both of us. At least 6 questions been answered by Vallam. I was a silent observer, and only thing I'm trying to do the motivational job. Yes, this question need to be answered. And lastly, it ended up with saying that this doesn't have any research value. because it's a simple information, it's available. You can go, you talk with so and so, and it can. So the effort of asking questions started there by someone else to me, and of course it didn't turn out to be a good research work itself, but of course we did some retrospective work and we were satisfied with that thing because officially it was not accepted, and that's how my research journey triggered by one of my junior started. And then naturally I think most of the questions evolved from my clinical side. I think when I was there in the low vision department, there are many questions came, and most of the questions we found it because once the answer is there within, usually I will don't spend a lot of time beyond that one. If it's satisfying action to asking 2 or 3 people, then I feel I think so. I never had when I started this so-called question and getting answer through the form of research, systematic approach to research. Maybe that's how my journey of research started. But real research initiative, if at all you want to come, it was defined only when I started my master's program way back in '96. And thanks to again at that time I had two, in fact many guides at the time, not one or two, but two, but in fact 4 guides I can climb at the time. Of course, Dr. LB Ma'am is a glaucoma expert who also helped me through my doctoral program. As whole glaucoma department per se. Along with that, Dr. Navin Jay Kumar, who was a neuro-ophthalmologist at that time, a person who can help us think out of the box. And Dr. SKR, Dr. Srinivas K. Rao, and Dr. Tarun Sharma, all these people have were around me for me to go ahead with the systematic approach for my research at that time. And of course there are limitations were there, that time challenges were there. Actually that is all part and parcel when we initiated, with that I was very well aware of it and prepared enough to take it up. And I was not surrounded by optometry researchers. I am surrounded by clinicians, ophthalmologists with who got nuances of research, and already they have established themselves into researcher. And that's how I was my first journey on research. And I remember the first work was on macular function in, or rather visual function in open angle glaucoma, primary open angle glaucoma. In fact, it was an interesting because when we did the literature, that's how they taught me how to go about. All of you are well aware how first step is should be, trying to dig out all the literature. Those time we were not well versed in all this, the systematic way of thing. Of course, the first level of reading is read extensive books were on glaucoma, and then try to get into, I don't remember at the time PubMed, but I remember taking down all the notes. It's a systematic way of putting down the question, putting down the title of the article from where I took, which date we did. All these things are all written format, and then write down the key points with the question and being answered, question being answered. And at the end, I will put down the date and I started and finished the thing. That's how I accumulated most of the literature. And all the literature, I have to take the photocopy and hold on to it. That's how I did those times. I feel various visual function issues and all I read only during that time, that so many visual functions beyond what we do in clinical scenario. We all read a lot of psychophysical stuff without much of in-depth understanding, but understanding that there is some kind of application on those things have happened. I feel my first journey is on macular function, and again, unfortunately, it didn't go through the thing, but I strongly felt that that was a very good work from my point of view, as well as the guide point of view. But there was not trust on, though we submitted for 1 or 2 journals and then it didn't get through. But one interesting finding, how the color vision changes, how the visual field changes with various stages of glaucoma. All these things were interesting finding. Color vision was really took a lot of interest, and that time then suddenly my interest jumped into color vision also around that time. So that's how my first journey started. Of course, um, after that, I think a lot of guidance to students with some particular question. And many a time, I don't like, though like to ask question, but if some research question come, I would like to see there is a direction for them to be given and find out the answer, and that so that people feel that I they themselves have found out the answer, and the ownership of having a question and getting the answer is, I always feel, will be the have the permanency and the interest to follow it for a longer period. I also did the same thing. Probably my guides and supervisors did the same thing to me, and I forwarded to it. That's so. I always feel this or the thing. Maybe if at all, when someone was teaching, maybe it was the initial period, I truly believe that during the masters, no one taught me publish or perish. No one. I never heard that is the key thing, because publication is not been insisted during at that time. So naturally, like what you people have been doing, it was not insisted. It was more of the enjoyment of doing the work, how to interact with the patient, how to recruit the patient, how to do the procedure, and all those things I enjoyed. Publication thing, of course, writing the thesis it's a challenge by itself. Those period, I don't know it's relevant, but when we those time we try to type it in one computer which is there in the library, and I finished the penultimate day. Everything also took input from Dr. Naveen Jaikumar for writing up. Was happy. I came back home, and next day I want to take a printout and show to Dr. LV ma'am, and there was the shock waiting for me. My thesis was nowhere found. Actually, it was deleted by some good soul somewhere, and went to IT department, help desk. They said they tried that. I think they couldn't trace. I think they ensured that the deletion was incomplete. So that was a shock. But those things are all challenges. Nice thing, I always have the habit of writing before typing, because I'm not good at typing. I write down the whole thing. So I have my volume of written format. Maybe one finger typing was what I'm very think. So I have to sit overnight, type all those things again. All those things are the story. That's how. No, but I think any research journey is not going to be easy, especially though the research question and those challenges are all part and parcel. But a lot of the surrounding things, will be a challenging too. Even recruiting a subject, convincing them, talking with them after they accepted not coming, all those things and part and parcel, which I learned during my doctoral program. Again, continued with the glaucoma. From open angle, I went to closed, and that to closed suspect probably. And the journey also was very fruitful in terms of learning, and and that made, because that's a part of protocol PhD, we have to publish, so naturally publication become a rigorous phenomenon, and that is how my publication thing. Though in between we in 1996 97 we tried along with Dr. Shenoy, who was there, who was at that time with cornea department. We both wrote something on acanthamoeba and contact lens. I think that was probably my first in-house journal publication, and few more we did tried as a part of the exercise during the between 95 and 2000. We did a lot of small work during in the in-house journal. Probably that has helped later on to for other peer-reviewed journal elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you for like giving the overall picture of how you started. I from this I take it as like clinical experience is very it's an important key aspect in terms of like pushing anyone into research. As like I was also following your footsteps, like in terms of understanding how the patient is really taking up and like a low vision surveys, and that initiated my research career. So thank you for funneling down how like your entire 20 years of research journey. So coming to the next question, can you share some tips? How do you really approach for collaborations. I remember you have been collaborated with multiple projects across the globe as well as Indian multiple hospitals and NGOs. So how do you really approach collaborations and build successful partnerships?
So most of the collaboration is people whom most of the time we know are in the areas they do work. Some collaboration came by itself, by themselves. I think they knocked the door, and some collaboration we have to knock. I think area of interest. I think so many initiatives and background would have happened. Out of that, I think my success rate is not very high in terms of especially research collaboration, to the extent that it almost would have been, yes, we are going to get it, but various reasons were there. It is need not be always human factor, but it's also related to the feasibility, logistics, and of course the bigger someone has to do it. All those things will decide on it. So what my learning is, and probably for anyone who ventured into it, you have to keep trying a lot of collaborative things. Um, Collaborations of late, I feel it need to be more of multi-centric in approach rather than bi-centric one, to be more successful. Maybe that is some learning which I am taking up, though I was not very successful with multi-centric one. So like-minded people, and through today, I think with the era of so many publications coming up, we know who is strength and what are the things. And ResearchGate is one place where I always find out who is who and try to approach them. So that is how most of this collaborative thing I think. So if always there will be things. So out of maybe 30 odd initiative taken during my period, especially the last maybe 15, 16 years, maybe 20 years close. I think the success rate is maybe I was I was just through with around 7 or 8 collaborative effort. But one thing which happened easily once, see, there are few collaborations will continue for a longer time. But in research side, I think my success more with the industries was very easier to, because those things were long lasting for me than other institutional thing. I don't say that is how it struck for me. It worked actually, but I know people who are continuing this kind of institutional collaboration, academic collaboration thing very successfully for a very long time. So I think that is my story on collaboration. I think if at all my trip is look for more multi-centric questions with multi-centric people, then I feel the wealth of information coming out of those work will be more applicable and useful for the community at large. So that's the advantage of any collaborative work. Look for more of multi-centric work.
Okay, so following to that question, like how do you address the ethical consideration in terms of any research? So I think you are the best person to answer that. Like, what are the aspects ethically has to be done when it comes to research, be it clinical as well as academic research?
I think the biggest challenge, because whenever I think even during the PhD time itself, one thing I realized that when we do a follow-up work, um, we realize that there are a lot of people who drop out, and there will be people, maybe from the sample size which you have thing and the timeline with which we work. As a young researcher, we always have the tendency somehow to finish how the fact guide will see it, supervisor will see it, and beyond which how we will do it for a very long time. I think that dilemma always will set in. So too in my case, that of course the lot of learning also happened. I think at that time Dr. Varadarajan was with me, and he said, KKV, there is something called imputational statistics. We can do those kind of filling up those strategies. Of course, we tried all those things as a learning thing, but in a clinical outcome, studies, I always believe that it can't be exactly equated to it. So, though truly think we tried that one, but what I realized at the end is as long as we feel that data is pure in its way without much of, because I also, the cleaning somehow, I feel the cleaning should not happen having an impact on your, to ensure that your endpoint. Sometimes the cleaning of data, somewhere I also noticed when I had a collaborator to work with me, they did a cleaning which is totally out of my ethics actually, because it is like you decide on your answer and you want to work, do the analysis. I said somewhere, I said that is not the way I would be happy to do it. But that learning happened during my PhD itself. There was a real dilemma how to go about do it, but thanks to my guide, she didn't, she encouraged as it is actually. That is something which I was very happy. I think that's the first thing. The biggest challenge I see is more than the uh, no sticking on to the methodology at any cost. And second thing, once the data is ready, cleaning up, doing it very ethical way. Third is on the discussion also. Whenever we feel, the discussion has, the study has got limitation, I think that's a great learning also I had during my interaction with some of the ethical people around me. Even negative findings is also a research, is the learning. So don't feel bad that if, though we want to have that kind of expectation, but it doesn't happen, that is the way you have to accept. And if you have a question on further that you are not convinced, you can always continue with the study, but there is no meaning trying to align with your thing. So I strongly feel this three thing was very important. The fourth thing I learned, which I feel many of the things, the confidentiality of the patient data, because whenever you do a study, I always felt patient or subject in this case, is actually a main player according to me, in the sense that you should take the responsibility of communicating to them at the end of the research work, whatever research you do, telling them these are the salient findings. And that is how we initiated this concept of public presentation for the masters and PhDs and later period. But I always felt it is our responsibility, researcher. So too, I did learn during my PhD. At the end of my PhD, I called up all my subjects and then gave them the information about what is the output. And they, in fact, invariably everyone were appreciative and very happy about the thing. I feel this is one of the ethical aspect that we have to keep in mind. The other aspect which I always feel is the ownership challenge we always feel. The first authorship kind of ownership, second authorship kind of ownership, those things I feel, once it has been agreed upon at the start of the research, I feel at any cost we have to stick on to it. Even the person is within the organization or gone outside the organization, even that contribution for which that person should be recognized, I feel we should not forget. Other important is carrying those research data elsewhere. This is also some of the stories we heard about. I was shocked when I heard. I feel this is something as a researcher you should be very ethical about the data, to data and from which institution it did work. Because some institution owns the data. That's because you gave the commitment as it is. I think we should do. But you want to still collaborate and continue when you're going beyond, you can always do. But you can't own the thing and then take it and get it published without the institutional thing. I feel the reason why I felt these are all important is these are all happened in my own eyes. So I always felt these are all important aspects. Don't forget. And always, if you feel, even if your junior has contributed, if you think that junior has really contributed more than you, don't hesitate. I think many situation I told that I would be happy to be acknowledged rather than take up the authorship. I think that kind of ethical practice which I feel strongly we should hold on to. Contributors need to be given fullest recognition, and best way to give recognition not by money but give the authorship and promote those work. I feel at this instant I want to remember one of the work actually by, I think this is something which I don't know whether it's directly connected, but I feel it is a very important one. The importance of how a researcher, have to have the strong attachment to the question he writes. And that's how one of the question came to me in the form of young optometrist who wants to pursue the PhD. And how I told is, actually, if you're going to do just get a profiling data alone, I told I don't see that it has got a much of PhD, and publications become very tough. So at least try to have some kind of intervention, so that see that how this has really helped those things. So somehow, though myself as a co-guide and the guide felt there is definitely can be looked into it, but the student in this case, or the researcher in this case, was strong opinion that for reasons it doesn't require for the PhD. Maybe we can look it in the beyond with some kind of things. I've been convinced. The guide has got convinced, and it went through. Though I was not at all fully convinced, I always felt, no, you should not, at the end of things, should not feel, no, you have to go back. But this person was so, strong in her question, and the way the research should go, and the timeline it will be appropriate. And believe it, I think it came through true when her work was completed, when publication came without even review in the first to go, and not to in some journal, in a plus one journal. I was really taken back. Not one, second time, and third time it was been proven that all her publication got through without much of ado. And even the presentation time, though the question being asked, everyone were appreciative. The final thing, I was part of that thing. So I feel sometimes, no, your gut says that this is the question, and I'm not telling you should disobey, but if you know how to convince your guide, I feel that is the best way to take it forward. I think I have to recollect the person's name, Dr. Kalpa. I think today, I think she's in Bangalore doing wonderful things. That is how I think. Believe it, I think after her publication came, within a month period, there was a call from Times of India asking for an interview. I think that is the real moment. I think totally transformed, because it looked, no doubt, it is a novel, new idea, new information for the community. And even government took it seriously when it, a government order was passed based on the finding. So I feel, somehow I feel young people, I know many of you, I'm not saying you should be adamant and reluctant, but if you feel something is more, and if you could convince your supervisors, I feel that is the way to go. And I always suggest that one, as guide or supervisors or senior, always give hearing to them. Even if you're not convinced, you try to continue to support. Um, that is the great thing for guide, as a research guide, I feel.
Yes, so thank you so much for sharing so much of information in a like nutshell, and thank you very much, Dr. Krishna Kumar, for sharing your perspective and research knowledge. I hope this conversation has ignited a little spark with all the listeners, and see you all in another ORCS podcast. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.